Good evening, everyone. I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit more semi-formal, kind of like how Rudy has been having his in the past when he's been having the little podcast things up here. So if you have a question or something, raise your hand, and we'll be glad to open the floor up for further discussions. So when I was asked to do this, when they were sitting there saying, like, what's the Spiritist view on Jesus? Why we still are deeply involved with Jesus' teachings and everything else, but we have a slightly different perspective on him than what you would see in the Catholic Church or other denominations and everything else. They take things and they put Jesus on this very, very high pedestal. And then Allan Kardec, with the help of the spirits and everything else, they came around and they were sitting there saying, like, we put him too high up. We forgot something along the way. So I'm going to start with the Spirits book. Question number 625. What is the perfect standard that God has offered to humankind as a guide and model? Their answer was very simple. Look at Jesus. And then Allan Kardec did his commentary. Jesus is the highest standard of moral perfection to which humankind on earth may aspire. God offers him as the most perfect model, and the doctrine he taught is the purest expression of God's law because he was animated by the divine spirit and was the purest being that has ever walked the earth. Now let's start breaking that apart, because now it's sitting here saying, like, wait a minute. He's the perfect model. He's a standard. What does that mean? Well, part of it means it's like, to kind of play around with the dogmatic things, it's like we are also divine beings. We are just as divine as Jesus. We are not as elevated as Jesus because he's the most perfect being to walk the earth. We are still, as Spiritism has taught us, we are imperfect, but we are perfectible. We spend many, many reincarnations, life after life, getting just that little bit better. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we do better. And we always try to improve. And we always try to get better. But then they were sitting there, it's like, but we have someone to look to, someone to emulate, an example. It's like, and then Jesus himself even said it a couple times. He's sitting there, it's like, pick up your cross and follow me. So he's sitting there going around and sitting there saying, like, live as I lived. Learn to be like I am. I'm the example. I'm showing you the way. I am the way. I'm the way, the light, and other things. We hear this all the time from him. And he was sitting there telling us, it's like, and he taught us the purest expression of God's law. He never broke any of the 10 Commandments. In fact, he even simplified it down to the 2 big ones, which will be coming up on the next slide. But you don't ever hear him saying, like, he didn't steal. He didn't bear false witness against a neighbor. I mean, he loved God above all else. It's like you can go look through just think about the 10 Commandments. He didn't break a single one of them for his entire life. That's hard to do, especially for us. I don't think we can get through one day without breaking a commandment. And he did it for years, his entire life. So he told us a way to do it. So we look at here, and we have the spirits coming by and sitting there and saying, hey, remember, you're on the same path as Jesus. We're further behind. He's big brother. He's, in our, just using the humanities term, he's firstborn. He's the first. He knows he's the farthest ahead of all of us. But he's turned around and sit there and says, I'm helping you up. Here, I'm your example. Let me teach you how to step up. And as we found out through history, that message resonated. Because we had from his example, and then the conversion of Paul and spread out, it created the dominant religion of Christianity throughout the whole world. Because it had a message to it with power. It had a message to it because it was a message of love. And not just selfish love, self-love, or love for your spouse, love for your children, love for just your family. He expanded it. He took that love and he stretched it out to communities, to the world, even to, and as we found out through the teachings of the doctrine, multiple worlds. Because in our house, in my Father's house, there are many mansions. So we got to love them all. We got to love all beings, great, small. We have that huge doctrine with us. Didn't click. So I'll start with the next one. So we went through the philosophical book, Spirit's book, philosophy. Now we have the gospel. Gospel according to Spiritism. First chapter. Jesus did not come to destroy the law. That is God's law. He came to fulfill it. That is, to develop it, to give it its true meaning, and to adapt it to the degree of humankind's advancement. That is why that is the law may be found the principle of duty to God and one's neighbor, which comprises the basis of his doctrine. Jesus modified them profoundly, either in the form or in substance. He constantly combated the abuse of outward practices and the erroneous interpretations. And he could not make them undergo a more radical reform than that of reducing them to these words: love God above all things and your neighbor as yourself. And stating, this is the whole of the law and the prophets. Those are your two greatest commandments right there, even a little bit further simplified. But by simplifying it, he made it far more encompassing. It's like, love your neighbor. Who does that apply to? That's everybody. That's your enemies. That's the person down the street. Like, we all have these people. We have something that bothers us. We all have these people that just, for whatever reason, we just don't like. But we have to love them anyway. Jesus did. I mean, in Jesus' time, what was he doing? He didn't stay with the Jews. He went out amongst the Gentiles. He took his message and it's like, no, I don't need to teach them. They've already got the message. I'm giving it to somebody new. I'm stretching it out. And in thus doing, and through all of many of his parables, he would sit there and saying, it's like, the people that are outside may actually be the better people. You may find good people in there. The Good Samaritan is a big case in point. How many times have we heard this parable? And it's like, the Samaritan was the one that was hated. He was the one that everyone in the Jewish community hated. But yet, that was the person that did all the good. Not the priest, not the banker. They walked right on by. But it was the person that people least expected came to their help. Even when you look at Jesus' disciples, they weren't great beings. What did he have? He had a couple fishermen. He had a tax collector that was hated. Granted, he ended up being the one that turned Jesus in. He even had some of his own brothers as disciples. But he didn't have anybody with great power, great dignity, great prestige. That came later. That came with Paul. That was after Jesus was risen. But that's when he did his Damascus moment. But you look at all the people in Jesus' life, he was able to touch people. He was able to touch people of no great prestige, no great things. He touched ordinary people. Because this message is for all, great to small. And it was abuse of our practices. As we keep finding out, even through the doctrinal teachings and everything else, especially gospel according to Spiritism. If you've had a chance to read it, I don't know, how many here have actually read it? Couple? What about the Spirit's book? Okay. about half of you. So you've read through, especially when you read through the Gospels, there's some things in there that's like, they don't teach you at church, at synagogue, wherever. They're different. They make you think. But the other thing too is we found out, like as Jesus was saying, Jesus is the example. So you gotta be like Jesus. You have to take up your cross and follow him. So how are you going to do that? I mean, pretty simple. Love God above all things and your neighbor as yourself. Simple words, hard to follow, right? But that doesn't mean we don't keep trying. That's why we're here. That's why we are drawn to Spiritism. Because it sits there and says, it does something a little funny. Spiritism brings in science into the equation. This is a little bit further on that same section, but I'm going to jump to the end real quick. Science would have to contribute strongly toward the emergence and development of these ideas. Therefore, it would be necessary to give science time to progress. This is one of our big things. How many of you here have heard Spiritism as the third revelation? In Moses, then Jesus, and then Spiritism, from the Spirit of Truth. Yeah. And this is kind of what it's going for. This last one here, science. Had to wait for the awakening of science in humanity. It took a long time, too. But once it finally emerged, then they were saying like, hey, people, again, science is not limited to the small group of people. Science is everything and everywhere, all things. And just like the previous law, it's like treat your neighbor as yourself. Apply that to physics. You both fall down. It's not like one person falls down, the other one floats up. Everyone falls down equally. Treat your neighbor as yourself. If I fall down, you fall down too. You stub your toe, I stub my toe. Equality within the universal principles. All of the law is on those two commandments. So I know we focus mostly on the moral laws, especially in Spiritism. But also, we got to keep remembering, God didn't just create morality. He created the whole universe, everything. Jesus, as I was doing my preparation, Jesus is God's medium. There is no one, no spirit that's going to channel through Jesus except God, the supreme intelligence, the first cause of all things. Spirit's book number 1. That one hit me hard. So when you have somebody channeling supreme intelligence and sharing it to the world, what does it say? Even Allan Kardec, when I was doing his things, the only thing no one on this planet will ever argue about is the moral principles that Jesus has espoused. All his moral lessons, nobody refutes him. Everyone says, that's right. You should live that way. You take the Good Samaritan, it applies in every religion. You just change out Samaritan. It's like, it doesn't matter, Hindu, Buddhist, Islam, Christian. If there's someone in need, you should be obligated to help them. He gave us those messages. So as we're getting closer to acknowledging Christmas, his birth, we're sitting here looking at this and like, wow, this person, and his ministry was only 3 years. And in those 3 years, he put down so much knowledge, so much here. Like even if you're reading in here, it's like he did not say everything And on many points, he limited himself to sowing the seed of truths that he himself declared that he could not yet be comprehended. So in those 3 years, he dropped a lot of, to use a modern vernacular, truth bombs. He dropped a lot of wisdom on us in those 3 years. And we didn't figure it out then. That's what the third revelation had to do 169 years ago. We had to learn more about what he's taught 2,000 years ago. We had to sit there and think about it even more and figuring out how it applies. And now we got science and scientific method and everything else. We get to think of things through. So when we sit there and we look at the Good Samaritan, we always hear about the Samaritan part, but when we forget the background characters, we forgot about the Pharisee, we forgot about the banker, we forgot about these other characters that were in some of these stories. Because there's wisdom even in the background. So when he gives all these stories, yeah, we get the main story, we get the best story, but then sometimes there's stuff hiding in the outsides of his stories that we forget about. We focus on the main crux of the story, but we forget totally about the rest of it. So we have to go back and think about it. That's why they tell you, go back, read the book, read the gospel. Even you can read the Gospels according to Spiritism. Just like Happy Life, random page flip, do a random page flip with the gospel. It's fascinating how many times you can flip the gospel, and whatever is bothering you for that day, there's your answer right there on that page. How many people have done that? 1, 2, 5, myself, 6. So I just randomly flip through, oh wow. And it's amazing the stuff you find on that page. And I really do hope that in the new year, the center will reopen doctrinal teachings in English. We can go back and start rereading those books. It's I may have gone through these, let's say 2005, so I've probably gone through the Gospel, the Spirit's book 3 times over. Each time I'm still learning something new. I got a copy where I've highlighted, and then when I go back through it again, I use a different color highlighter, so I have a different color. So I have one of my Spirit's books has 4 different colors of highlighter in it, because I've gone through it so many different times. But I learned something new in each of them. Same with this, and same with Jesus' teachings. Just sit back and think. Take a moment, think. What's another parable, what's another story of Jesus that comes to your mind? Anyone? No?
Wedding.
The wedding? Explain. What was the parable? Do you remember?
No, it just came to mind.
Just came to mind, okay. So, let's see. I'm trying to remember if this is the one with them making. No, that's not where he did the feast, or is it the one where he turned the water into wine?
Water and wine.
Water into wine. So, there's another one here where he comes to save the day. Because they came in here, and then again, I'm going to say the background story to that. Because he goes on, they serve the good wine, they run out, and then all of a sudden they had to turn, and it's all we got is barrels of water. And Jesus says, okay, serve him that. He blesses it, turns it into wine. And then the funniest thing happens. They all say, you saved your best wine for last. That was mind-blowing back then. It's like everyone does their best, shows their best foot forward. And here all of a sudden they comment that they saved their best for last, even though it was just water into wine. But it was still, when you start thinking about those other topics, it's you start thinking about what is the meaning of it? It's we all know about the story of first impressions. So we have a first impression, but then all of a sudden we come in and we have a surprise at the end. It's no. Your first impressions were good, but this other impression was even better. It's you're the quote from Aladdin, diamond in the rough. They thought you were good now. They thought you're even better later. So we start, and that's one of the things when you start looking at people, you go through and you start analyzing them. You do your first impressions, like, oh, that's a good person. That'll be a hard worker. That one's lazy. That one's going through troubles. Something like that. Whatever their problems are. But that's your first impression. Then as you go through and go through, you can find out some great things about this person, some amazing things. They're totally different from what you see on them, from what you see on that first impressions. I mean, look at me. As the gentleman says, like, I work on the roadways. I'm out there repairing the roads. So, and believe me, I pray a lot because I see some people speeding by, and we have a little saying that there's no magic in that orange witch hat, because that don't stop anybody. So we're out there driving, and you're hauling tail through the work zone. That little cone doesn't stop anything. So we don't put faith in that. And we try to, like, they even tell us don't have faith in the drivers. Watching the phone, driving along. So we don't want anyone to get hurt. And so I'm out there trying to make the road better. But at the same token, it's like I go through pain. I put everybody through a lot of pain. A lot of pain. But when it's done, when it's opened, no one's going to complain about the pain. It's like, oh, this is great. This is nice. Maybe you have to pay a little bit more for that express lane, but right now you're going through all the pain. Soon, that's going to be gone, at least for a while, because we know everyone wants to flock to Orlando. It's growing. So, and that's what keeps me busy. I'll do something, it'll look good, and then 5 years down the road, not good enough. Add another lane. Okay. Well, let's do that with Jesus. Jesus came. He gave us a lot of wisdom. So he added a lane. But he was smart enough. He put the room out there because he knew that's not enough. There's a consoler coming. Spirit of truth. Third revelation. And science. Science is coming. Humanity is going to wake up. It's going to learn. It's going to start learning things. And as it learns things, we're going to start expanding, being able to do more. And we're able to understand more Jesus' messages. Gentleman brought up the wedding. We'll go through it a little bit deeper. So we're sitting here looking at it, we're saying, like, the awesome power of Jesus. He can heal on command, rebuke demons. It's like he can do a lot of things. Walk on water. He can see the fish. It's like, no, don't fish over there, fish there. It's like amazing. But, as the doctrine tells us, he was a human. He was on there. He had a body. He may have been the best. He may have been perfect. That doesn't mean we can't be like him. That's one of the big messages I always took from this. It's like, remember, we are perfectible. We can grow to be like Jesus. There's some books out there that even says we can even go beyond Jesus. And I was like, I'll stop with Jesus right now. I'll work to be up at Jesus' level. But, yeah, I'll go back to it. He came to teach humans that true life is to be found not on the earth, but in the kingdom of heaven. To teach them that the way leads there, the means of reconciling themselves to God, and to forewarn them regarding the progress of future things for the fulfillment of human destiny. There's a section in here, I had to cut it out, because as you can see, this slide's pretty full. And it was talking about how the earth won't end until the last last piece of the law has been fulfilled. What is that? Well, in that little section that was out there, they were sitting there saying, it's us. When every single human on earth is perfected as Jesus, then we're done. But until that time, we're going to keep going. We're going to keep growing. We're going to keep learning. Jesus is still needed. His message is still needed. The pathway is still needed. We're all still going on that path. Even though we're all taking little different side routes to get there, we're all going the same direction. We're all still going up. We're all still being perfected. Like I said, we take our stumbles, we take our falls, we take our little side trips, but the journey is still the same for everyone. We'll take a real life example. How many's read this book 2,000 years ago? Reading it right now? How far are you? 10 pages. Ooh, that means I'm going to spoil a little bit about this. I'm not spoiling the ending, but actually I did that 2 weeks ago. Oh, sorry. Emmanuel, when he was Senator Publius, I think it was at this time, in this lifetime, he was Publius. He's a senator, Roman senator. He's out there one day, had a big fight with his wife and everything else. He steps outside, and then all of a sudden, just like as he's there, he just feels this sudden wave of warmth, this wave of love. And in the course of the story, Publius meets Jesus. You have to physically read the stories. I have a different copy of the book here. And it's amazing because now all of a sudden you have from a spirit's perspective, a spirit coming back to tell us what he experienced in Jesus' presence. We don't really hear about that in the Bible. We kind of see a little bit in the gospel teachings and through the codification. But here, now all of a sudden we get a first-hand account from a spirit that sit there and sit in like that wave of warmth. And that was an aura like a quarter mile wide. It's like you felt that warmth. And he's like, oh, he felt that warmth, that joy and everything else long before he even met him. He had that euphoria. Comes in, meets Jesus, has a little conversation. Jesus goes on his way. And he has this thing, and eventually once Jesus is far enough away, then all of a sudden it just like reality comes back to him. And like that feeling fades. And then he feels crappy again. But he remembers that moment. It sticks in his mind. And how many of us, as we've been studying, whether it's the Bible, the gospel, doctrine, the Spirit's book, how many have read something of Jesus, a gospel of some kind, and felt touched by it? How many here have actually, I was going to say, should not be almost everybody. Every one of us has been touched by his message. Our societies have changed drastically by his message. We're here about ready to celebrate his birth, the beginning of his life, and the wonderful messages he gave us, how much he has changed the course of human history just by being born and starting a path that forever changed this planet and continues to change this planet to this day. We don't get it right. Again, like I said, that's what the third revelation was for. Is to kind of help say, okay, you guys took my message a little too literally. We want to bring it back. And then saying what was meant to be as an allegory was taken literal, and then we need to bring it back and sit there and it was a thought experiment. Because again, science. So you can sit there. We can play what ifs now. We're able to think in terms that are we can't, that's not physical, it's intangible. I mean, none of us can perceive a quark, an atom, an electron. We know they exist. We see their effects. We see the effects of gravity. We see with the moon, everything with the moon and the tides and everything else. We're able to perceive things that's outside of all of our senses. And Jesus clued us in on another one that we didn't know existed. And it took Allan Kardec and the spirits to wake us up again, saying, hey, there's a whole other area to be explored. There's a whole other area of wisdom, of knowledge, that has a direct bearing on your lives. For the people that have kind of met me already, they notice that I keep telling people, there's 3 hooks. There's the 3 pillars of the codification. You got your philosophy, you got the science, and you got your religion. And usually one of the 3 pulls you the most. Religion was mine. Like the moral laws, studying the moral laws, really hooked me and pulled me in. So that's always been my focus, is to live the moral life. Take Jesus' take up your cross and follow me. Now I know everyone here, if you ever get a chance to speak and present a lecture, you get a chance to say from your point of view. It's one of the good things I like about Spiritism. There's no one, other than the codification, but it's your interpretation of it. Because I'm saying, like, from my point of view, on my road, this is what I saw. This is what I read in that Spirit's book passage. I told you what I saw, what I read, what I took out of it. I bolded those sections. Those weren't bolded in the book. Those are the things that I've picked out of it. And it's like, oh, this is important. You're going to find something different. And that's okay. You're going to interpret things differently. That's okay. Because, again, we're all heading on the same path. We're all taking slightly different paths to get there. Some may be pulled on the science, interacting with the spirits, doing the mediumistic works and everything like that. And even Jesus was okay with other people doing other things. What was his always comment to most of those people? What he would say? Go and sin no more. He loved everyone. He knew they weren't perfect. He knew they did things that they probably wouldn't be proud of. He certainly wouldn't have been proud of them. It says he's the only one that followed the laws to the T. The rest of us didn't. But he was sitting there saying, like, hey, I forgive you. I'm picking you up. I'm helping you up. Learn from this and go. Take what I've just taught you and go and don't do it again. And then we found out with the doctrine, it helped us out. That says when it helped us realize that we come back in multiple lives. That's another gift. It's a gift of being reincarnated. And it's like, I screwed up in life, this past life. Let me make up for it in the next one. So we're all here learning from previous examples. And Jesus is giving us the way. He's the example. We see him in this little manger here and everything else. Humble beginnings. It's like no grandiosity, no. He was offered the frankincense, myrrh, and gold from 3 kings, 3 wise men. That's it. No fanfare, the angels and everything else did. And the animals certainly knew. But for the rest of humanity, nothing. Just another child born in Bethlehem. Came in from humble beginnings. Father's a carpenter. Humble. And yet, he came in and had so much power. Of course, he was born with it. He came with it. He's the perfect being. But yet, he didn't take pride. He humbled himself. He washed the feet of his disciples. He cleaned them. He washed them. He was a servant to them. He would teach them and everything else. But he would get down and help people. He would show charity. And he was freely imparting wisdom to humanity. We needed it. So, when we think about like I am looking at all these gifts here, and we keep thinking like we give those to our family members and things like that. And we do have I believe there was a box out there for toy donations that goes out. So that's at least part of what he's taught us. Love your neighbors yourself. Here, let me have charity. Let me help somebody I don't know. Let me bring a child's face with a toy or something like that. Help brighten their day. Now that's great for one day for Christmas. But Jesus did it every day. I mean, there was another story. He got in trouble on the Sabbath because he healed on the Sabbath. It's like, why? Why should I not help somebody because it's my supposed day of rest? This person needs help. If I can help him, I will help them. That's my love for him, this person. I don't know who he is, but I love him so much that I don't mind getting up and going to work and helping somebody. So we created all these fancy laws for ourselves, and still having it to this day. We got all these things. If anyone follows politics, there's a whole bunch of laws there. But then we got to go back to those two big ones. Love the God with all your heart, and all your soul, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So we got to apply it. I got to treat you as I want you to treat me. I'm not going to... So, as I said, I came from New Jersey. They're cutting people off as an art form. I got bored with that. I didn't like that. I was studying this, and I was like, so someone cuts me off. Go with God. Peace be with you. God bless you. You probably have to go. Probably someone's in a hospital. Something bad's happened. Go. So I had to change my mindset. And yeah, have I accidentally cut people off? Yeah, sorry. And I usually would sit there and say, sorry, forgive me, in the rearview mirror. So I sit there and try to apply that and say, hey, I don't want to, I don't honk the horn anymore. It's annoying as it is. I'll say beep beep, hi. But I'm not going to be somewhere and you cut me off. Mm-mm. No, that's going against what Jesus taught us. Love your neighbor. There could be something going on in your life, and I shouldn't be the one to make it worse. Just by laying on the horn or something, giving you the finger, whatever. I should be helping you. If you're racing to the hospital because your wife's about to give birth, yeah, I should get out of your way. I don't know you're coming. I don't know why you're running 100 miles an hour on the roadway. But if I knew that, you better believe it, I'd get out of the way. I'd let you through. So now's the time to go back and take a break and reflect. It's take what Jesus is. Remember, Jesus was the example. We can be like him. We're supposed to be like him. He gave us a swift kick in the pants by giving us this message, the gospel teachings. And it worked for a while, and we're still learning from it today. We need to get back to it and focus. Humanity is very stubborn, it's very slow. Spirit's book says that many times over. But we have a chance to kick it into high gear and learn. Learn from our mistakes, learn from others, learn from people like me. I'm not perfect. I'm telling you my impression. Maybe there's something in it that you can take from it. I hope so. And hopefully, when you leave here today, and you're driving home or before you go to bed tonight, you sit there and you reflect. And you're like, yeah, that starts to make a little bit of sense. We're talking about the supreme example. Big brother, in a good way. The example. How can I live my life to be more like him? So I'll leave you with that. Looks like we're about time for vibrational. So do we have anyone?